Hey, thanks for hanging out. In this video, I'm going to show you how I went about adding a bit of character to these second-hand wine barrels. And we're going to compare two finishes that I used on each of the barrels as well. Let's get after it. These are second-hand wine barrels that were outside at the place that I bought them from. There is a little bit of weathering on these that needs to be cleaned up before paint and staining. I tried a few different tools to clean up the timber and the metal bands of these barrels. Tried a coarse twisted wire brush, a finer metal brass brush, which is on the angle grinder at the moment, and also a sanding disc. All I needed to do was just get the colour of the timber consistent, just remove any dust and any discoloration from sun damage, and also get the bands cleaned up, just get the rust off of those ready for paint. I found that the brass metal brush really gave me the most consistent result out of all of those three. I've tried a few different techniques to remove the rust and clean up the timber. What I found was I got the best results by coming in on a much steeper angle on the metal, which cleaned up the rust a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently, but then used a much flatter approach with the timber, which was able to spread out the contact pattern of the brush a lot more and give me a much more consistent result, which I liked a lot better.
You've been getting on my good side, and it's something that I can't hide, yeah. When I'm with you, I'm tongue-tied. I know you're not that dramatic, but I'm out of you, I'm an addict. I can't get enough, and I know that I'm not usually your type. Darling, there's no need to be shy. See the curiosity in your eyes. Come a little closer, babe. I don't bite.
Now that I had these cleaned up and started to mask them up, it became a real pain to turn them around manually on the concrete. So I got this scrap piece of plywood and some casters from another project and quickly made up this dolly, which made it much easier to be able to spin the barrels around for masking them up and also painting them. To mask these up ready for paint, I used a combination of green and blue painter's tape, only because that's what I had lying around to use. The 25mm or inch wide I used up next to the bands themselves, just to be able to follow the contours of those easily, and then the 2-inch wide or the 50mm wide I used in between. Between the two, I found that the blue painter's tape worked a little bit better than the green. It just had a little bit more tack and it just held onto the timber and itself just a little bit better. After cleaning the bands, there wasn't any visible rust at all, so I just applied some wax and grease remover to be able to clean them up, and then I went straight in with the black enamel, which can be used on clean steel without a primer.
Hot mess up east side. Heard about me, it's all lies. If you want good, change your mind, yeah. Don't want to intimidate, but more than just conversate. Don't want it to be too late.
one of the benefits of this project with 2 barrels to do is that it gives me a chance to try out 2 of the leading brands of exterior timber and decking oil. This one was recommended to me by a cabinet maker, and this one was recommended by the local hardware store as a good quality exterior timber and decking oil. The main things that I'm going to be looking for are how well it goes on, the odour, the general feel of it afterwards. Does it feel like that it's got an oily residue or not? The appearance of the timber as well, and just see which one's best. The main reason for doing it is I've got a project coming up that's a reasonably important project, and so I want to make sure that I've got a really good quality finish on there, and if one is better than the other, well then that will help me make the decision about which product I use. So I'm going to take the rest of the masking tape off here and start to coat one of these in the wattle product and then the other one in the intergrain product, and I'll give you my thoughts afterwards.
I know you're not that dramatic, but I'm out of you, I'm an addict. I can't get lost, and I know that I'm not usually your type. Darling, there's no need to be shy. See the curiosity in your eyes. Come a little closer, babe. I don't bite.
Alright, let's start with the wattle product. So it's quite easy to apply. You can easily see where you've applied the coat of oil. It's bringing out a beautiful rich colour in the timber itself. So these are oak wine barrels, so there's some quite coarse grain to get the character from with the application of the oil. So really no problems applying it. It's going on quite well. I feel as though that I'm getting good coverage. There's an odour to it. It's quite strong, but not that offensive that I feel like I need any kind of respirator or anything like that. It's not like an aerosol spray paint. Probably my one comment is that it doesn't seem to immediately absorb into the timber probably as much as I expected. I guess I had thought that that this would probably soak in a little bit more. But I love that rich colour that it's bringing out after having prepped the surface of this. The way that I did that, as you saw, was just with a wire brush. Really all I wanted to do was just take any surface dirt and any of the sunburn off, and just get the surface back to just a raw timber finish. I didn't bother sanding it. I'm not worried about the grain being coarse at all. Just adds to the rustic charm. So overall first impressions, I like how it's being applied. I like how easy it is to be able to see where you're going with it. It's got an odour, but it's not too unpleasant. What I'm not too particularly keen on at the moment is just how wet it still looks. I would have hoped that it would probably look a little bit more like this end grain, where it's obviously soaked in there quite a bit already, and could probably do with another coat tomorrow. So that already feels dry, pretty well dry to the touch, whereas this still looks very oily. So I know from using this product in the past, this will take a day or two to dry on the surface, and even then you can still see some areas that do look wet, although they are dry to the touch. So so far so good, and we'll see how it compares to the other product. Okay, so let's see how the Intergrain product works, which was the one recommended to me by a cabinet maker. First impressions, the odour is a lot different. It doesn't smell anywhere near as oily as the other one. It smells a lot more like almost like a bathroom air freshener, but quite strong, much more almost citrus and pine. It's very different in colour going on. If anything, I'd say it's actually a little bit harder to apply than the wattle product. Certainly not as free flowing as the wattle product was, and I'm immediately more conscious of the residue on the steel, which I'll wipe off anyway, but it's obvious to see where that is, whereas the other product, it wasn't quite as obvious. Certainly much more pleasant smelling than the other one, and it feels slightly thicker out of the can than the other product as well. So the other product felt like it went a lot further off the brush than this one is. I feel like I'm putting a lot more product on to be able to get the same coverage with it, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, it's just an observation. So this feels much more like paint than the other one, which in comparison was almost water-like. And I think as this soaks in, I really think that I prefer the way that this looks on the timber than the other one. But we'll do a side-by-side comparison once I've got the rest of this done. So that's the first impressions. I'll put up a shot of the other one side by side just to be able to have a quick look at how they compare still wet straight after application. First impressions, I think there's pros and cons to both. I probably prefer the look of this one, and it certainly seems like it's drying a little bit quicker than the other one as well. So we'll see how they look at the end.
Hot mess up east side. Heard about me, it's all lies. If you want good, change your mind, yeah. Don't want to intimidate, but more than just conversate. Don't want it to be too late, yeah. Know that I'm not usually your type. Darling, there's no need to be shy.
After using both finishes, one on each of the two barrels, the wattle product certainly went on easier. It was much easier to apply. It was a lot thinner and went further, I felt. The Intergrain product took a little bit more to go on. It was much more like paint, whereas this was much more like very watery consistency. The Intergrain was very, very pleasant to put on. The odour was really quite pleasant smelling, whereas the wattle product definitely smelled like it was an oil-based product. The Intergrain takes a little bit longer to dry. This takes 7 days to fully cure, and the wattle product doesn't take that long at all. And I can already tell that the wattle product is very dry. It feels very dry to the touch already. This is just one coat, and the Intergrain product has much more of a waxy finish to it at the moment, but that will dry out over the next few days. So I'll probably really need to come back a little bit later and do a water test just to see how well the water beads on top of both products. But I definitely feel like that at the moment the Intergrain is going to do a much better job. The colour, I'm a little bit mixed between the colour. There are some elements of both that I like, so I think I'm split on the colour that came out with both the products. I think that each have got their slight advantages in how the grain looks and that sort of thing. You can make your own judgment on that. So the Intergrain product was the barrel that's on the right, and the wattle product is the barrel that's on the left. Cleanup's exactly the same, so there was no difference there. At the moment I think they're very even, but I'm probably leaning towards the Intergrain just because I think for outdoor use this definitely feels like it's going to do a much better job of keeping water out of the product. So my recommendation at this point would be the Intergrain product. There you have it, another project done. I'm really happy with how the black turned out, and also how the barrels look after applying some furniture and decking oil for outdoor use. The next little job I've got to do is just drill a hole in the top of these, and I'm going to put an umbrella in each of these as well. I'm going to fill them with just a bag of play pit sand just in the bottom, so that when the umbrella stem goes through, it's just got something positive to sit in at the bottom so that it doesn't move around too much, and these should be great. I'll give you a shot of those once they're done as well. But a great fun little project, quite quick and pretty simple to do. Give it a go yourself. If you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to leave those below. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's short, so get after it.